This is Umar Ahmed for IFL TV in association with MTK Global via Skype, joined by head of Sky Sports Boxing, Adam Smith. Adam was just talking about, before we start recording, it's getting a bit tedious now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It's not what we used to. Weeks of this, and it's one of those that it's something we've all been instructed to acknowledge what the government's saying. Obviously, the most important thing is continually supporting the NHS and those on the front line and doing everything we can to adhere to that and to make sure that we're doing our little tiny bit to try and get everybody back to some sort of normality. Everybody's missing in our world, boxing, live sport. A lot of us are missing the travel and the events, but it's a different world that we're living in. There's a lot of difficulty out there. There's too many deaths. There's a lot of illness. There's vulnerable elderly people that we've got to protect, and all of that. So I think every one of us has probably been affected in some way. We probably know somebody who's had it or had it seriously, or we know a friend of a friend who's lost an elderly relative, or maybe not someone so old. So it's a difficult time. Every Thursday night, the kids and I are out there, and we're clapping and banging for the NHS. They're the heroes. We've got a doctor in the family, and they're the ones that deserve all our attention at the moment as they do what they can in what is a unique situation. And we hope that obviously come the weekend, Boris might tell us that we're going to have slightly more freedom. I'm sure that he'll want to get businesses back up and running, but he's got to do it safely, securely, and it means I think we'll have many more weeks to wait before live sport returns, certainly boxing. And I think there'll be many months before we get back to anything like what we know and love, which are the crowds, the atmosphere, the events. I can't see that much before the end of 2020 or even into 2021. But the most important thing is that everyone stays healthy and safe and secure. And I think with this situation, as the weeks go by, it's all about having a structure. But yeah, it is difficult, and I think that for people like you and I who love chatting at events and around press conferences or weigh-ins, it's weird, and hopefully it won't be going on forever, and certainly for much longer.
Adam, it looks like we've sort of gone past the peak now, hopefully, and as you said, Boris is expected to make an announcement where things are eased up a little bit. Therefore, sport, people have to start planning things, and some sports are going to come back quicker than others. Unfortunately, from the outside, it looks like boxing's going to make a return last, because we're a unique sport where, unfortunately, we do require the services of the NHS. We hope that we don't on the night, but the reality of the sport is that we do. Whereas, for example, darts or pool or even contact sports don't require a certain number of ambulances there, etc. Therefore, are you worried that boxing's going to come back last, essentially?
It's a good point, Umar. And only a few days ago, I was swapping messages with Spencer Oliver. It was 22 years, I think, since that night at the Albert Hall, where longest night of all of our lives, I think, waiting for news. And, his life was saved, and he made 100% recovery by the brilliance of our NHS, our doctors. So, it's a stark reminder that, health is wealth. Health is the most important thing. And as you rightly say, boxing is, well, first of all, it's a dangerous sport. And the other thing is, obviously, we need, doctors, paramedics, anaesthetists at ringside. And, that was the reason when we were all sort of geared up for the golden contract, the last show that was pulled just before all this. The main reason was that Robert couldn't guarantee the doctors to be there, because there's one thing with the sort of crowds and reducing that and even having it behind closed doors, but if the doctors can't be there, there can be no event. And especially with a television one, I think you need more. So that is difficult. And I think also, boxing is a sport where as we said, it's dangerous. Lives are on the line, and I think that while the health service are battling to save lives at the moment, I don't think it is the right sport to come back with first anyway. I think from our point of view on Sky, we've frozen subscriptions, and we'll look to come back. I'm sure with football if we can. We wait and see what happens with the Premier League, and then there's obviously the return of cricket and other sports. And I think because boxing is so unique, as you say, and so different, and we have to make sure that everybody is healthy. And obviously there's lots of planning that will need to go into it, with obviously COVID testing and social distancing, and anything behind closed doors is, yes, it's away from a crowd, and there's it's a more sterile environment, but still there's going to be a lot of people there, because a coach is going to be in a corner with a fighter, there's going to be judges, there's going to be broadcasters, there's going to be promoters, all sorts. So there's going to be people. So we're going to have to look at and Eddie and I talk daily about how that can work, and we can come back safely. It's a completely different situation to any of us are used to. We're used to unpredictability in boxing, of course. Fights falling through, almost making up our own calendar. It can be the Wild West out there, can't it? But ultimately, I think this is a time where we have to collectively get together and only do what the government suggests we should do. I think Robert is handling this fantastically, and the boxing board will decide when it comes back. And if it comes back in July events, that we understand there'll be sort of 5 fights, there'll be less fights, there'll be less bigger sort of fights probably at the beginning. So it will sort of ease back into it. And I think that seems to be the way the government's going. Everyone wants to go and hug grandparents and get kids back into schools, and there's all of that we'd love to happen. And it'd be incredible if there was a vaccine and there was a cure, and suddenly you could click your fingers and it could all go back. It's not going to happen. That's going to be we're going to be weeks and months away from anything like we remember. So I think we just got to take each day as it comes, and sort of, we're talking behind the scenes about how we'll be coming back. I don't think there is a rush. I think we've got to get it right. We've got to get it absolutely safe. You're right. Fortunately, at most events, the ambulances are not needed. It's boxing is much safer than it ever was, because of the stipulations that have been put in by the board, by the government, by the health service over the years, and because everyone's better at dealing with it. But still, there are, unfortunately, the occasional fatality or the occasional serious injury. First of all, we don't want to be, at the moment, even though we're past the peak, allowing any more problems on the front line for the doctors and nurses and hospitals that are busy at the minute. But at the same time, we want to protect our fighters as well, as much as we can. And although I know they need to get paid and they need to earn money, the most important thing is that we bring everything back as healthy as we can. Because can you imagine if it wasn't, and everybody got the disease, and everyone was struggling again, and then the boxing world had it, and then we were put back another number of months. So it's sort of very, very gently, I think, and very carefully, and only when it's right. The most important thing, we all want boxing back, of course we do. We all want sport back. We miss it dreadfully. All of us who love live sport, it's so much part of our lives. But the key is that we all need to be healthy at the moment, and we need to support others who are much more in need than we are.
And when boxing is back, it's obviously going to be without a live audience. Therefore, purses of fighters are going to take a hit, because that money and revenue stream is going to be lost. I was thinking this the other day. I'm guessing Sky are going to have to look at the budget that they give each sport, including boxing, whether it's reduced, whether it stays the same. And fighters are obviously going to be asking, where's the extra money coming from to cover the live gate? So have you had anything from Sky or any indicators how the money or the budget for boxing is going to be affected?
No, it's all a sort of work in progress at the moment. I mean, as I said, boxing is not the main sport on Sky Sports, for example. We all love it, and obviously it's gone through a huge sort of halcyon period, a renovation really, and a rebuilding of boxing over the last few years. What Eddie's done at Matchroom, what we've done at Sky, what Frank's done at BT, DAZN. There's so many more competitors. There's so many more people interested in boxing now. Again, it's a great period. And I think when we went into this, we're looking forward to fantastic fights with, White Povetkin and Joshua Pulev, and we just had the huge Fury Wilder fight, and obviously that even the sort of the Sky Sports fights like Josh Kelly's and Lewis Ritz and Savannah Marshall's world title. There was so much to look forward to that it was such a shame that it hit when it did. But it's hit everybody, and I think the most important thing is that when we've got 11 channels on Sky Sports, and at the moment it's difficult. We're trying to fill those with obviously sport from the past, debate shows. We've got the boxing show every Friday. We've got different sports shows, on every day of the week. Cricket, Formula One, golf, football all the time. So, obviously the teams are trying to get as much content as we can, so much creativity, keep everybody, entertained at this time as much as we can, it's a difficult period for everybody because a lot of the staff are working from home, 90 whatever percent, 95% probably, apart from the sort of essentials that absolutely have to be in Sky headquarters. Everybody's at home working away, and they all want to sort of do as much as they can, but it's very difficult because with no live sport it makes it really hard. And I think that there's much bigger contracts than ours that are being looked at, which are sort of come first in the Premier League, in the EFL, and in the cricket with ECB and Formula One. And I think that, we have to wait. And when we know what's happening with football and we know what's happening with cricket, I think then we'll sort of slip in behind them, really. And I think that, obviously we have to look at, Sky Sports shows. We have to look at, pay-per-view fights, because Sky Sports box office fights, we had 3 all ready to go. Now, as you rightly said, with a gate, can those be made behind closed doors? It would be amazing if 1 or 2 maybe could, but in reality, there's huge money that comes from the gate. I think when I was there for the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight, obviously one of the last ones before the coronavirus really hit everybody, I think that the gate was possibly the biggest heavyweight gate of either of all time, or certainly it was very similar to I think it was maybe a Holyfield Lewis fight in Vegas, or one of the. But I remember Todd DeBerth telling me, yeah. So are they going to be able to put the third fight on at this time in this year with no gate? I think Frank Warren's come out and said that, hasn't he, that Dubois and Joyce can't happen without a crowd, I think. And, so I don't know, everyone's going to have to, give a lot for something like that to happen. Are the fighters going to obviously pull back? Are the promoters going to pull back? Are the broadcasters going to pull back? Everybody's got to sort of work together here if we're going to get fights out there, or certainly big fights. I think, the British board have sort of said, you would come back gently. We would come back with small fights, and maybe that's the right thing. And fighters want to get out there again, of course. But money's going to be a big issue because, with no live gates, certainly for the foreseeable future, we're going to have to get inventive and innovative, and ultimately. But that's Umar, that's the case with so many businesses out there. I've got friends in catering, I've got friends who are actors, I've got friends in events, in restaurant businesses, and so it's really hard for anyone that's in sort of entertainment, anyone that's in sort of events that involve people. It's a very difficult time. What happens with the theatres and the cinemas and all those things? Are people going to feel safe going there? Is there going to be, a third of these places full? How are they going to do it? There's a lot of issues there, but I think what we can say with boxing and with sport is that when the time is right, we can come back, and we can come back behind closed doors, providing it's a safe environment or a sterile environment. But I'm sure that can happen. It's just a question of when, and we just have to be patient, whether it's going to be July or maybe even August or September. It will come back. Boxing will come back. I have no doubts about it. But we all have to feel, we have to look at the way it can come back, and financially, what sort of, what makes it work commercially from a business point of view. We're a company, of course, that, okay, well, the sport lies dormant at the moment. We've got huge parts to Sky and Comcast, which are, broadband, Sky Q, the news, hugely essential parts that are keeping the nation going. It's just that obviously there's parts of it, like the Universal parks from Universal Studios, the studios itself, obviously not making films at the minute, and sport not happening. Those are the parts of the business which are, have got to come back. But there's a lot to Sky. It's not as though we're just a sports service or just a boxing service. So, we have to sort of do our bit at the moment to support other teams, and we'll come back when the time is right. And when we come back, it will be, I'm sure, with some sort of a bang if we can. Obviously, we'll be getting all our creative and innovative hats on to try and think how we can come back. It's not going to, Sweet Caroline and the thousands at the O2 and the Manchester Arena are going to have to wait. But I think the most important thing is that we get boxing back up and running and we rebuild, because we're having such a fantastic time before this. I have no doubt that we can get to that point again. It just will take time.
It's going to be your voice at ringside echoing around the building.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I was saying to Eddie that like at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon in one of the arenas, we do have fights. It's just that maybe even the doors aren't open, or they're open to, I remember Marcus Morrison once fighting, and I don't think his mum had even got in the arena yet. So sometimes there are only, there's you guys, there's the board, there's 30, 40 people around ringside, and fighters have told me they can hear the commentary, and it's very different. It's very raw, it's very real. But I was talking to Casey Taylor the other day. She had hundreds and hundreds of amateur fights everywhere, and half of them were in empty halls. So I mean, it for the fighters themselves, I think some will adapt fine. I think some need that adrenaline of the rush of the crowd, and it will be different. I remember Jim Watt and I commentating in the King's Hall in Belfast on a world heavyweight title fight, a Klitschko fight. We're doing it off tube in Germany. And the King's Hall was empty. It was before a packed night. I can't remember who it was, Carl Frampton or someone, and it was a packed night to come. King's Hall is the York Hall of Northern Ireland. It's a fantastic venue. And Jim and I were sitting with no one there, literally at ringside, commentating on a Klitschko fight. It was really bizarre. But we're going to have to get used to that. And obviously, I love the fact that there's lots of people at ringside, and you can engage opinion, and you can feel the crowd. And it's going to be very different. It's going to be, judges, and it's going to be a much more real, raw environment for the fighters. But I think a lot of them are prepared to do it. Dillian White saying, set me up in a car park, set me up wherever. They want to fight. And I know, as I said, spoken to Katie the other day, she's desperate to get back, and she'll fight behind closed doors or whatever. As I said, it won't be the same. But then there might be fighters who need that, that rush, who are different characters, and they may have to wait longer. So it's going to be fascinating the way it develops. And the other thing is that fighters have lost 3, 6, maybe they'll lose 9 months of their careers, and some can't really afford to do that. So they're gonna want to get on with it, and they're going to want to take maybe more challenging fights quicker. And so I think we're going to get, eventually, it won't be just yet, but eventually I think we're going to get some fantastic matches. And I think that boxing will be back, and it will be back really strongly. We're always the underdogs, aren't we, as a sport? I've been at Sky almost 26 years now, and when I started, it was Gary Norman and I, and we were in one corner of the office, and we've always been sort of the outsider a little bit, but we've brought boxing back to the mainstream. The heavyweights are as good as they've ever been, and people want to be involved in boxing, and whether it's training, and you turn Joe Wicks on and he's doing some sort of shadow boxing in his workouts. Everyone wants to do the boxing fitness side as well, and I think that's really coming. Women's boxing has never been better. I think there's huge things to remain excited about, and I think it will come back, and people want it back. But I think, as with every sport, we have to look at it carefully. We have to look at it from a business point of view, and we have to make sure that it's right for everyone. And it's going to be hard, but the most important thing is that the fans are going to get the fights back, and I'm sure that will happen in the coming weeks.
Adam, I think it's fair to say sometimes lower down on the cards, we can get fights that aren't particularly great for TV, where you got a guy flying in from, let's say, Nicaragua or Mexico against, someone like a 10-0 Brit. And we kind of know the result, and it doesn't really engage with the audience. Now we're in a situation where we don't know when flights are going to reopen. You said fighters are going to have to make more of an effort to make the better fights quicker and to get on with their career. So from a TV perspective, from your perspective, there may be some benefits in where we see a load of more domestic clashes with unbeaten fighters.
I think so. And I think that is also the way forward. We say, Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, different promoters don't talk, etc. And, I think, years and years ago when I took over the executive producer role at Sky on the boxing, I did an article, I think it was in Boxing Monthly, where I said it'd be great if the promoters can get around a table and, you know, everyone can fight each other. And obviously, realistically, everybody's got their own agendas and everybody's got their own stable, and that's fine. And it's bred competition, and that's great. But I think this is a time where, you know, we have to be a little bit more collaborative than we probably once were. I mean, for example, if we want the Joshua Fury fight to happen, you know, that is going to involve huge amounts of people from all sorts of promotional outfits. You know, that's going to involve obviously MTK, it's going to involve Top Rank, it's going to involve Frank Warren, it's going to involve Eddie, it's going to involve Shelley Finkel if, you know, Deontay Wilder's, you know, next in line for Fury and all that sort of stuff. So it's involving a lot of people, obviously broadcasters, you know, BT, DAZN, Sky, etc. ESPN. So, you know, if you're going to make something like that happen and suddenly, okay, the Pulo fight goes away, maybe Wilder Fury goes away and you make the big fight next, or even if you don't, maybe you make that in 2021, people are going to have to get around the tables or a Zoom call or a Skype or something to some extent. So I think in a way, you know, Robert's the key man here, Robert Smith at the board, because, you know, what he said is there's going to be 5 fights. So, you know, there's going to be less anyway. So we're not going to have these big bills where we're going to be struggling to sort of squeeze everything in. And I think those fights are probably going to have to be more competitive and better for the audience, because if we've only got sort of 5 fights to show on Sky on a night, they're going to have to be really good ones, because we don't want to sort of waste 1 or 2. So there's going to be a lot of pressure for the fighters to take that. But I think they'll just want to get back and get on with it. So, you know, this is a chance where, you know, your prospects, your Boazis and Kellys who are meant to have, this is maybe their year to really develop those sort of type fighters, you know, maybe they're going to have to take, you know, the plunge a little bit early. I mean, Josh Kelly was about to, so, you know, you want to get that fight back on, but, you know, are they both prepared to take that fight behind closed doors? Is there going to be the money involved, or they're going to have to, you know, there's a bit of give and take, you know, how a box office fight's going to happen and in what way, and will they, some of them wait? Will we have to go abroad for certain things? Will the world, you know, I mean, we know Italy and Spain are coming out of lockdown a bit quicker. We're behind them. Will Germany be the first back? You know, what's going to happen in the Middle East? How America going to cope in the next few months? Some states are open, some aren't. It's a complete, you know, it's a complete global story, this, you know, and I've got a lot of friends in the tennis world, for example, who I'm close to, who's saying that, you know, tennis is going to, you know, they're starting back. Our scholar, Daniel UMAR, is playing in exhibitions in Germany this week. He can do that because, you know, there's a safe environment. They can keep people, you know, players in one area. And so they can get on with things. But if you're talking about sort of getting, I don't know, you know, Rafa Nadal in with Djokovic, in with Federer, in all these different sort of countries involved, and you're getting them to Australia or getting to America, you know, that's where it becomes difficult, you know. So I think the global sports are going to be harder, certainly to get back to the very top level. Whereas boxing, we could have AJ and Fury here, or we could all go somewhere with that fight, you know. When there's sort of, when we know more about travel, you know, things can sort of move quicker then. But I think for the moment, it's about bringing sort of UK boxing back as and when the time is right. And as you say, you know, it's we might not get those Nicaraguans coming in from Spain. It might be more difficult to get that, you know, the borders and the travel and different countries coming out of this in different times. It might be harder. That it might be that there's a lot more UK based fights, and you know, these fighters have got to work together in a way. Now, does that mean that also, you know, if Frank and Eddie and Robert can work together in a way, yeah, okay, there's rivalries, there's, you know, everybody wants to come back with the better fights and the better, you know, and I'm sure that, you know, Eddie's very confident, we're very confident that we'll come back with fantastic stuff. I have no doubt about that. But what about the doctors, for example? Can we share doctors? Can there be a pool of, you know, will we come back in a studio type space or whatever in one area of the country, so that, you know, we don't have to sort of get people traveling here, there and everywhere and fighters moving around a lot? Will it be, you know, could that work? You know, could sort of Essex or Hertfordshire or London be the sort of base for boxing to come back for the next few weeks and months? And therefore we've got, you know, we are sort of, although there's rivalries, whatever, we are sort of collaborating in certain aspects to get boxing back quicker. But I think that we have to, we say back quicker, it will come back, Umar, no doubt about that. I think it will come back probably July, maybe August, but we've got to just be patient, and we've got to do it in the right way, because we don't want things when we come back to then go back 3 or 4 steps. We want to come back and then rebuild to what we once knew. And hopefully, we're all reminiscing about AJ and Klitschko last week and 90,000 at Wembley. I mean, how we should remember those days, because those days are not round the corner, but hopefully they're not that far away either. So this time next year we can be looking forward to big events like that again. But it's all about sort of the people, really, the population, and how many want to go out. Financially, will they be able to afford to go to events, not just boxing, but go out to the theatres and restaurants, etc. And business has taken such a hit, and that's one consideration, a big consideration, and also the social distancing. And are people going to want to go and sit near people? And and some will want to, and some really won't, and we just have to wait and see. And I think everything that happens from this weekend onwards from the government will be a slow and gradual sort of rebuilding of life. I don't think it'll be anything quick.
Adam, any sort of news, good news, is blown into really positive news these days, because we're trying.
Yeah.
You probably know what I'm going to ask. ESPN broke a story where they said MCK are listening and talking to Saudi Arabia, and that they've signed an NDA on Fury's behalf, and Eddie signed an NDA with Saudi on Joshua's behalf. And obviously that solves the problem of Eddie and Frank. MCK are dealing with Fury's side, and obviously Eddie can just take care of Joshua's side. It's good to know that there are conversations going on, although they might be limited at this point. There's conversations between everyone going on. However, Deontay Wilder and Kubrat Pulev have got contracts to sign, both fighters. Do you see at all Deontay Wilder stepping aside,
Adam? I don't know. I've swapped some messages with Deontay. He wants his titles back. He wants that chance of revenge. Yes, it was dramatically one-sided in Vegas, and let's not forget the first fight. He was just the miraculous ending when Tyson Fury somehow got up. That could have been very different if he hadn't made the count, or the fight had been stopped, and it could have been a very different story. But he got away with it, Wilder, that night, and he got the draw. In my opinion, Fury won by 2-3 rounds. Something was either wrong with Deontay in Vegas, or it was Tyson Fury's greatest performance. We saw him beat Vladimir Klitschko. We were ringside for that. That was a wonderful, wonderful win for Tyson. But for me, the win in Vegas recently, maybe it's because it's more recent, and it was an incredible night. I thought it was brilliant, because he did what he said he was going to do, and no one thought that outside his close team that that was the way to go about the job. But tactically, he was phenomenal. And Deontay would have had to look for excuses, and whether it's the costume or an injury or whatever it was. I mean, I was told on the day of the fight that he was in great condition. So, but he's a fighter. He's lost for the first time. It's nothing wrong with that. He's reigned for a long time. He'll want to try and win his world heavyweight title back. No question. Does money talk? Will there be enough money to step aside? Possibly. Would he actually, rather than that, would it be a better thing for him to come back and get a real big confidence boosting win against a second tier heavyweight, and wait a bit longer? But I don't know. He's no spring chicken, Deontay, and he'll want to get on with it. And this whole period has delayed everything anyway. So I'm going to talk to Todd DeBerth this week and see what he's thinking. I'm waiting to talk to Shelley. Look, it's great that there is communication with the different parties for the Joshua Fury fight. It's the fight that everybody wants to see. And with this strange situation in the world now, it might be the fight that does make sense to make. And Kubrat Pulev and Deontay Wilder, do get money, or they get a slot on the card, and then they fight the winners. Who knows? There's anything can happen. But I think, yes, Pulev does have a fight with Joshua, and in a way, maybe Joshua, with the gap now, would want that Pulev fight first. Pulev deserves it, but of course, the other interesting point is that Pulev is with Top Rank, so they'll have a say in that side. So I think more it's Deontay Wilder, and what is Al Heyman thinking? What is Shelley Finkel thinking? Do they just want that third fight? What if Wilder gets beaten badly again? Could that be pretty much the end of Deontay? And would they take that risk? And it's a money thing. But would the gate, if it's got to be this year, for example, with no gate in Vegas, how does that affect things, financially? So there's a lot in the pot here. I mean, yeah, we've probably got to assume that Wilder Fury and Joshua Pulev happened first. But, with everybody now sort of with NDAs and Saudi and everyone talking and, whether that, I still think Frank and Eddie need to speak at some point. I don't think that, it's going to come down to, to communication, and I'm sure MTK will have a huge part to play in that. But I think that, yes, I don't think it's a fight that can be made, Fury Joshua. And, we've seen all sorts of things in boxing over the years, rematches not made for a while, or trilogies, put on hold. We've seen all of that. So it will come down to money. It will come down to business. It might come down to travel too. And it might come down to whether the Middle East are in a better position in a few months' time than we are. Also, the time of year as well, and, site fees and all of that side. So I don't know is the answer. I know conversations are going on behind the scenes. I will do everything I can to help steer towards Fury and Joshua, because it's the fight that everybody wants to see, obviously. But if we go with Pulev first and Wilder Fury first, then fine. We should get two great fights, and then, it's almost like two semis and then a final, or however way you look at it. And if Wilder beats Fury next time, which he's still got the power, let's not write that off. And, he'll be a big underdog going into a Fury third fight, but, he's got that power, so you don't know. But then you can see Wilder and White, and, let's not forget Dillian here. And I'm looking forward to White Povetkin. I think that's a fight that, that we need to see. So there's a lot happening in the heavyweight bubble. And what happens with Daniel Dubois now? Does he fight Joe Joyce? Is that going to be put on hold with what Frank's saying? Does Dubois, maybe get, Frank's come out and said that he'd like him to fight Deontay Wilder by the end of the year. Could that be an option? And who knows? There's so many in the mix, which is a great position to be in. And I do think that Joshua Fury Joshua, however you look at it, the unified undisputed titles will be made. And I think it will be made within a year. I just can't see whether it's going to be 2020 or 2021. And that just depends on the weeks ahead and the communication and the egos and the pulling of of the rope from side to side, and the monies and what everybody's prepared to take to make this. So I don't know whether Joshua fights Pulev next. Probably is the most likely outcome, and Fury and Wilder fight again. But I think there's more chance of Fury and Joshua happening than there was a few weeks ago. And I'm very positive about that. So, yeah, if you want a bit of positive news, what we do have at the moment, UMAR, is time. So it is a lot of time to communicate, okay, albeit we're not, next to each other. We are on this, Skype call, and it may be that you need to get them all around the Zoom room. But wouldn't you like to be a fly on the wall if you can get Frank and Eddie and all of them on there? It'd be amazing, wouldn't it? I've been taking photographs. So I'm gonna take one right now. I've been keeping a sort of like a pictures and a blog of all the things that the kids and I have done and everyone during this lockdown period. So because you might want to look back at it in a few years' time. I'm going to take one right now, just of you and me. And do you know what? I would love to take one. Can you imagine them all on there? Bob, Todd, Frank, Eddie, MTK, Shelley, maybe even, Pulev's people, coming in with something. Maybe they get the broadcasters in from ESPN, DAZN, BT, us, the commentators. I tell you what, wouldn't that be something to put out there? You get a few hits on that, wouldn't you? It's got to be behind closed doors. I don't think there's any way that this can be made in public. I think it's got to be behind closed doors. I think there's a lot of good people involved in making this happen. I think, look, I think Eddie wants it. I think Frank wants it. I think people want this fight to happen. So I'm very confident that Fury and Joshua will be made. I know Tyson wants it. I know Anthony wants it. So I think it will be made. There is, as always with boxing, stumbling blocks and it's a big one with Deontay Wilder because he's got the right to a third fight, and if he wants it, he's got to take it. But we'll see. We'll see if we'll see. I think he's picked up an injury, so we'll see how that heals, and maybe he'll need a little bit more time, and we could make the big one first. But then what happens if the big one happens and Fury or Joshua win dramatically? Is there a second one? And then all of that. It gets very complicated. But we do want to see the undisputed title. To be honest, we want to see boxing back. So whatever we get at the moment, we'll take. But I think if there's a little bit of positivity, I do know that there are talks, and that's always a good thing. And I think that ultimately it is the biggest fight out there. It's the fight that everybody, if we could come back and say, boxing's coming back, and then we have, Fury and Joshua for December, I mean, the world will sit up and take notice of boxing very, very quickly again. But AJ Pulev and Wilder Fury are two very good fights in their own right. So let's see, because a lot of these fights need crowds or they need serious money. So it's a long road to travel on those. But communication is going on, and that's great to know.
Before we end, Adam, I've got to ask. You said you've exchanged sort of messages with Deontay Wilder. What have they been about?
Yeah, look, I mean, I exchanged messages with Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, and Anthony Joshua, and Dillian White, all of them in the last sort of
the same chat.
3 or 4 weeks. No, I mean, look, they're all good guys. They're all fighters. I respect them all. We work with some more than others, etc. But they're fighters, and they are the livelihood of our sport. They are the gladiators. They are the ones that risk their lives each and every time they get in the ring. And I, as you know, have immense respect for every single fighter that does, whether they are the Nicaraguan journeymen that come over, whether they are the ones that the Peter Buckleys, the Centurions, the 400 fighters, whoever they are, whether they're the hot prospects. Everyone that gets into the ring has my respect, and we wouldn't be doing this without them. They're brilliant. It's a very difficult week for me this week because I got very close to Diego Corrales, and he was an amazing character, and we spent a lot of time together when I was a reporter on the road. And it's the anniversary of his passing on Thursday, and also the same day was the anniversary of the greatest fight, in my opinion, that we've ever had on Sky with Diego Corrales and Jose Luis Castillo, their first fight. So you get close to fighters. It's difficult. You stay fiercely independent behind the mic. You have to. That's absolutely without any. It has to be independent. But you get close to fighters, and all sorts of them, and pretty much every one of them. And some you miss. I haven't worked with Tyson Fury for a while. I sort of miss his humour. I sort of, I'm on his, look at his Instagram, etc. And now there's obviously, we're working with MTK and through Eddie, with Eddie putting on the Golden Contract shows, and they've been fantastic. And so that's been good. And MTK are growing. They've got huge amounts of fighters, and it's great. So it's been good sort of reaching out a bit to Tyson. Deontay I've worked with for a long time. I'm very, very fond of Shirley Finkel. We go back a long way, back to way even before the Mike Tyson days, So there's a lot of relationships, and because we've got a lot of time, and just sort of reaching out, making sure they're all okay. So Deontay's a great guy. I really like him. Really like him out in the ring. He's a great bloke. He loves England, and he's great to chat to. So we just sort of swap the odd message, and my kids love AJ, and so he's always asking after them, and it's really nice. And Dillian really likes Mum, so so does Derek. My mum's always at the boxing, and she's sort of struck up a friendship with Derek and Dillian, and it's mad, isn't it? And Anthony, and so they're all asking, how's your mum doing? And it's great. They've all got their focus, they've all got their goals, they've all got their hardness that fighters need. But you know what? They're great characters. They're great individuals. And you know what? Sometimes if I need a bit of cheering up or something, I might reach out to one of them. And I had a really good chat with Katie Taylor and my kids on the weekend. Katie's come and stayed in our place in America, and it's really nice. And that doesn't mean that when Katie Taylor fights Amanda Serrano that we want Katie Taylor to win. It's not about that. It's the better lady wins. The better Fury Joshua, the better person wins. That's not what it's about. That's the business side of it. But we, you and I, and all of us get close to fighters, and you've got to keep your professional distance. You've got to keep your independence. But we love them, don't we? And that's what it's all about. And I think at this time, a time of reflection, as well as sort of plotting our way back and looking forward and how boxing comes back, we should take a time just to think about those big nights, the AJ Klitschko nights, and remember the Corrales Castillo night. I'm just about to write a piece on it. And, you know, we shouldn't forget what's gone before. I think sometimes we're so determined to do better and better and drive ourselves on that we don't stop and look back. And it's a great time of reflection as well. And you know, it's great that Spencer Oliver's with us 22 years after that night, and he's in great nick, and we talk all the time. And you know, it's an amazing sport, and it's a sport that brings out the real human side and these characters. And you know, it's good that we can all sort of reach out at times. And you know, people get annoyed and people have, you know, issues and all of that, and there's money involved and there's politics and all the rest of it. But deep down, we love it, don't we? And we love reaching out. And it's, you know, we're in a great position to be able to do that. And hopefully the fight fans will benefit from great fights being made over the coming years, like great fights have been made in the past. But for me, it's a chance to really reflect on what's happened and the great fights that have been, and look forward to more great nights ahead in whatever way they're going to be. And for a while, they'll be different. But I'm really hearing the fighters. They want to come back. You know, I'll fight in the car park. I'll fight wherever, you know. Have gloves, will travel. You know, I love that about fighters. I love their dedication. And I think they, as a sporting clan, the fighters, men and women, are going to come out of this isolation period because, of course, they're used to isolation, a lot of them. They're going to come out a great deal better off than many sports. And I think that's a good thing for us. I think that when we are ready to say go, to pull that trigger, to get the green light on that fights are back, we will have our sportsmen and women ready. And I think, yes, there's sparring. Yes, they'll have that build up. They'll need 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of that. But we know that mentally and physically, the majority of these, the large majority, are going to come out absolutely chomping at the bit to get back. And I'm not sure you'll be able to say that in all sports.
Adam Smith, thank you very much for talking to IFL TV. Hopefully the next time we speak, there's an update on society, hopefully some positive news, and there's an update on boxing from the board. But for now, we'll leave it there. Anything you want to add, Adam?
No, just everybody keep safe, you know, keep at home, listen to the guidelines, get out, exercise, but keep at home. And I think things will ease a little bit in the coming weeks. I think, you know, the freedom will be better. I think, you know, more shops will open. I think, you know, the odd restaurant, my kids can't wait to get to McDonald's. Apparently 15 of them are opening, aren't they? And, you know, I think they want me to drive to Middlesbrough or wherever the first one opens, you know. So, I mean, the most important thing is to stay, you know, healthy and safe. And I think utilize this period to think about, you know, how we're all going to come back, and we will be back, and, you know, to reflect as well, and to remember that this won't go on forever, and that, you know, we should think of the NHS, think of those on the front line, think of the key workers, and support them as much as we can. And, you know, hopefully when there is some sort of normality back, we won't forget that maybe this is about being nice. You know, it's what I'm trying to tell my kids when they're scrapping and, you know, arguing and whatever, and, you know, homeschooling's going on and it's tough. You know, we've got three characters, 3 different characters here, 3 different schools, all sorts of, you know, it's all going on. We've got builders here as well, Umar. It's but, you know, everybody's healthy, and I think that's the most important thing. And you know, and we're learning new skills. You know, it's I couldn't cook before this, or I could cook about 2 dishes. I'm trying to cook every day and do something different. So Lorraine Pascal, thank you so much for the recipe books that I found on the bookshelf, and I'm going through her recipes, and I'm, you know, making cakes with the kids and all of that, and trying to write a bit more. So I'm trying to do things that maybe I didn't have time for before, but also, you know, speaking to Eddie every day, who's going through the same thing. Trust me, the homeschool and all that. You know, he's having his problems. He's realizing what algebra is all about again. You know, so, you know, we're speaking daily, and we're going to come back absolutely with a real passion. And you know, we always have that. We love work. We love the live events. We want them back. And trust me, we're going to come back and do everything we can to bring them back in as best possible a way. But just a bit of patience, a bit of time, and that's not what we like in the boxing world. You know, we want, you know, everything 24/7, and, you know, and I miss that. You know, I'm getting up at 7 in the morning and not 5. It's weird. You know, I'm sleeping more. It's really strange. I'm not sure I like it very much, but, you know, it's what it is. And I think that, you know, when we come back, we'll be absolutely all ready to go, and we'll be so excited. And you know, we go again, and that's what this sport's always been about. Protect our fighters, get our fighters out, and look after them, make sure they're as healthy and as safe as they can possibly be. It is a dangerous sport, and we must remember, the great nights and the great names of the past at this time as well. And that's why for me this week is about one man. It's about Diego Corrales. It's about the closeness that we at Sky had with Diego, the incredible life he led. Not all good. He lived a bad life too. He had his ups and downs, and tragically he lost his life far too young, in his late 20s. And he lived that life in a sort of a roller coaster way. But we had a very, very special bond, and this week is about thinking about him and remembering the great nights he gave us. That is for me this week. So hope everyone enjoys their bank holiday. Friday is a nice day for everyone. Apparently the sun's going to be shining. So yeah, and we hope Boris gives us a little bit more freedom on Sunday, and we adhere to all the guidelines, and we all stay safe, Umar. So that's the message, isn't it? All stay safe and keep yourself well.
Definitely. Adam, thanks for your time. Hopefully speak soon.
Cheers, Umar. Take care anytime, mate.
Thank you.